crazy times. I'm Julie Bauke, and thank you so much for tuning in. I do not think I am live. Okay, there we go. Hey, hi everybody. I'm Julie Bauke. Thank you so much for checking in. Some of you are on here because you heard me on Sloanie this morning talking about job burnout. We'll give people a couple minutes to log on. I've already gotten some questions for today, so I want to get to those, but I also want you to know that you can ask me any question you want. I have people moderating the questions who are smarter than I am in all things technology. So thank you to Helen and Christy for being here. You know, we're all fried. And so I think one of the first things you want to think about is what can you control and what can you not control? There are certain things that we can and certain things we can't. And so start to put your hat on and think about what are the things under my control. In my background, I have worked with thousands of people who are in the midst of a career transition or who want to be in the midst of a career transition, who want to make those moves. I wrote a book called Stop Peeing on Your Shoes, Avoiding the 7 Mistakes That Screw Up Your Job Search. It's available on Amazon. That'll walk you through how to get a job the right way. And have counseled so many people who hated their jobs, who got laid off or got furloughed, our favorite word these days, and didn't know what to do next. They didn't know how to move on. And you know, in these times, whether you've been laid off or furloughed, or you're just wondering, you know, am I going to get laid off or furloughed? Or do I even want to come back? I mean, I think that's the big question you need to ask yourself is, do I really want to go back to where I've been? Even if they call me and say, hey, Fred, come on back. It's your lucky day. Really, is it though? Is it your lucky day? Do you really want to go back? So let's unpack a little bit about how do you figure that out? How do you get beyond the burnout? And I would say if you're not somewhat fried, confused, overwhelmed right now, you're probably in denial, because we all are, whether it is having kids at home, whether it's being forced to work from home with inadequate tools, whether it's you and your spouse having to occupy a small space, whether you're living with your parents, whether you're worried. I mean, just really, really try to step back and ask yourself, what are all the different things I'm experiencing? And, you know, then look at it and say, well, why wouldn't I be burnout? Why wouldn't I be overwhelmed? And so for each of us, here's what's tricky about it. For each of us, it's a different thing. For instance, there's some of us who might be thinking, oh my gosh, I hate this remote working. And other people are like, I don't mind it, but my kids are driving me crazy. So what is it? Write it down. And I know, you know, in these days of technology, we want to put everything online, but there's something magical about pen to paper. Write down what are the things that are stressing you out, and then figure out which of those you can really control. And I am sure that there is more that we can control than we think. And so getting really clear on what those things are, and then setting boundaries. Sometimes when we're really kind of freaked out, it's very easy to say, well, nothing's in my control. And it is. How you react to things is in your control. How you react to your boss and your work is in your control. If you were on with Sloanie and I this morning, one of the things I talked about was how I figured out that I'm only good for Zoom calls for like 30 minutes. And so some of the Zoom calls or online, even conference calls that you have to schedule, you do have control of. Like the example I gave was with my kids. After 30 minutes, I'm like, I gotta go. Well, I can say that to my kids. I can say, stay on as long as you want. Mama's out of here. But sometimes with our work calls, we can't. So with some of the calls that you have, set them up for 15 minutes, for 30 minutes. Make sure that everyone's not just blah, blah, blahing. What are the things we need to get done? What's the purpose for the call? And feel free to say no. One of my favorite quotes is, no is a complete sentence. You don't have to explain. And a lot of this gets to boundaries. And even those of us who are pretty good at managing our boundaries have really lost that ability right now because we feel like we're out of control. Schedule calls, any calls you have for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I heard somebody else say, I used to be able to walk down the hall and get information. Now everything has to be a scheduled call. And so if you're better in the morning, maybe schedule them in the morning and take a break in the afternoon. Get super focused on what it is that you have control over, and work on those things. And in my mind, one of the things we do have control over is, are we happy with our current situation? When sometimes we work with people who are employed and they're gainfully employed. There's no end in sight to their job. Their company likes them. They think they're doing a great job, but they're not happy. And they're saying, you know what? I should just be grateful to have a job. Well, as I always say, don't should all over yourself, because when we are into our shoulds, then I think we're not really looking around and saying, what are those things that what do we want? I remember when I had my last job in human resources, I looked around my office and I had this great office with beautiful art on the wall and a big desk. And I said to myself, wow, I should really be happy, but I was miserable. And I went to a job where I started working in the career management field, and they only hired me part-time. I had no office. I was doing all my paperwork on a table in the mailroom, kind of with one butt cheek propped up on the table. It was the happiest time of my life. So getting super clear on how do you want to come out of this is really powerful. When we work with people who are in the middle of a job search or a job change and they really want to make a change, just beginning the process of taking action helps immeasurably, because not only do you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm in this place and I can't put my head up and I'm freaking out. You start to feel like I'm taking control. I'm getting my resume and my LinkedIn profile done. I'm starting to think about what I want next. I don't have to stay here. I'm not an indentured servant here. I don't have to stay here. I can go do something else. That right there is super powerful. And so figuring out what you have control over, and believe me, friends, that is one thing you have control over, how you will move forward from here. And sometimes when we have our head down, 24 hours a day, and we're just trying to survive, it's really, really powerful to put your head up and say, yeah, I am going to think for a few minutes about what I'm going to do when all this is over. Because it's really easy to get in that space where you think nobody's hiring me. I'm just going to be so grateful to go back to where I was that I'm just going to do whatever they need me to do because I hate this feeling of uncertainty. That right there makes me crazy, because that says I'm giving all of my control and power to somebody else. And so once you figure out why you're burnout, what's causing you stress, certainly you can't make your kids live in the yard. And if your kids are driving you crazy, I get it. But what can you control and how can you move forward powerfully? What is it? Zoom calls that are driving you crazy? Is it your boss 24/7 sending you requests? Is it your colleagues that are freaking out and they've decided you're the one that they need to talk to when they're freaked out? Are you absorbing other people's stress? And if you're a real empath, you will absorb other people's stress. And so, the getting to the point where you're able to put up your armor and say, I can't, I've got enough going on of my own. I'm really sorry, but I can't talk to you about this right now, is okay. No is a complete sentence. We're sort of in that up front. I think we kind of thought, well, this is kind of fun and exciting. We can have happy hours and lunches and we can do all these great things with our colleagues. And I think we've learned that doesn't work. And yes, you can gracefully decline. You can say, no, thanks. You can say, I'm not able to do that. I can't do that right now. You can say to yourself, I can do 1 or 2 happy hours a week with my friends or colleagues. And that's enough for me. My bucket is full. And undoubtedly you have colleagues whose buckets are huge and they really want to spend a lot of time talking because they're bored. You don't need to take that on. Identify what's burning you out, identify what you have control over, and figure out what you're going to do about it. And sometimes you can't do anything about it right now. Yesterday, I was thinking, I would love to rent a house on a beach. And it was kind of an odd thought because I don't really like the beach. Like, I didn't really want to go on the beach. I just wanted a house that I could sit on the porch and look at the beach. And so I know that like short-term rentals aren't happening. So I knew I wasn't going to be able to do that. So I just went on Airbnb and looked at houses. And certainly there were some available for May. But nobody's, it's probably not going to happen because beaches aren't going to be open. Now, next week, I might be totally past that and be like, yeah, I don't want to go to the beach. What was I thinking? But sometimes getting out of where you are and thinking ahead is really powerful. Look, if you've got PTO taken up, if you've got PTO or vacation time saved up, it is perfectly, wonderfully acceptable for you to take some time off and to unplug. You can still take time off during this time. And what's interesting is and if you were on with Sloane and I this morning, you know that back in January, February, people were super fried. They were just as burnt out then as they are now. And for some of us more so. So this isn't something new. It's really something that you have to look at it and say, how do I manage it? So January, February, we're all burnt out. We're like, oh my gosh, I've got this 24/7 life. I'm never allowed to be off. I'm never allowed to be off my phone or off email. And I'm just going to go crazy. So this is still familiar in some ways, but there's additional stuff added to it. So yes, you can take time off. You can take a sick day. You can, unplug, whatever that means for you. And for us, some of us, taking a walk helps us feel better. On crappy, rainy days like today, it's sometimes exceptionally hard. But for others of us, it's reading a book or doing some other things. So the advice is the same, whether the work burnout is due to COVID or the work burnout is just due to you hating your job or you having a job that's impossible to do in 8 to 9 hours a day. All of those are problems to be solved. It's like this big puzzle, and you have to figure out what are the pieces you can control. Okay, I'm going to get to another question. Okay. I used to love my place of business, but they've not been handling the work from home situation well. Do I hope things go back to normal or do I start looking? You know what? There's a middle ground there. Here's what I always say. Our process is think, plan, execute. I'm going to figure out who I am and what I want. I'm going to get all my tools ready. I'm going to get ready for a job search. You never have to execute that, but you'll be ready. So if things go back to normal or whatever normal was for you, where you used to work, and you like it as well as you did, that's great. You don't have to do a job search. It's not disloyal to look for a job. One of my favorite sayings is, your company wants you until the day they don't, and you have to act accordingly. So getting your resume, your profile, getting anything up to date, is absolutely what you should be doing at all times. And then you can put it on a shelf if things go back to normal. But let's say that you do go back to work and wow, it's not what you thought. You have a new boss, the new expectations are different. Because of COVID, you have, what they expect of you is different, or the business is changing. That's going to happen with a lot of us. You get the opportunity to look around and decide whether it's for you anymore. But imagine you go back to work, you look around, you're like, yeah, I don't think so. Guess what? You already have your resume up to date. You got your LinkedIn profile up to date, and you've already thought about what you'd do if it all went away. So you're ready for action. We have some people contacting us right now who know they want to make a change, or they've lost their job, or they absolutely know they want to make a change. Uh, but they're like, it's a bad job market. Well, first of all, it's not. There are still plenty of people hiring. All of our clients are still actively interviewing for opportunities. So that's exciting. But what I tell them is, okay, even if in your field it's not a great time to look, you want to get ready. Our process: think, plan, execute. Okay, think about it. This is a perfect time to think and plan. It's like you're getting your bag packed and you're putting all this stuff in it and you're thinking hard about what you want to take on this trip, but you're not going to leave for the airport until the airport's ready to receive you, until you're ready to get on the plane. The beauty of, let's say things start to get back to, everyone's kind of back to work-ish in July, you're ready to start your job search. You're ready to start from a position of power instead of getting thrown right back into the mess you left. And now you're like, oh my God, I wish I would have taken time because now I'm working 80 hours a week instead of 60. I'm never going to get out of here. So don't look back and Monday morning quarterback yourself and say, I woulda, shoulda, coulda. What you need to be doing right now is thinking about the next phase in your career. All right, I'm gonna look for another question. Let's see. Love this. How can I negotiate working from home full-time after I return? Well, yes, I would imagine there are some people out there who are saying, I kind of like this work from home thing. Think of this period of time as your audition. Now, back in the day, back in the old days, then at that point, you were probably thinking, I wish I could work from home. I wish my organization would let me work from home. Sloane and I would talk about this, and I'd say, well, what's your audition? How are you showing up? And I know it's a tricky time, but are you getting your work done? Are you being productive? Are you being responsive and communicative? Are you easy to work with, given all the other things you're dealing with? If so, what you're actually doing is you are building a case to work from home moving forward. So when things go back, when life goes back to, somewhat normal, hopefully the kids will be back in school or in some sort of camp, and you'll be in a situation where you really could work productively from home. What's the business case? I really enjoyed it. That's not a business case. Show me and tell me how you were able to stay productive. Why is it okay for us to still have you at home? And frankly, maybe it even isn't 5 days a week. Maybe it's 3 days a week. Maybe you say, could we start 2 days a week? I think during this time, I proved myself to be highly effective from working from home. And here's why. Here's the stats. Here's the feedback I got. What I'd like to do is to continue that 2 days a week at some point. What would I have to do to make that happen? But if you're goofing off and saying, man, I'm, open up a cold one at 11 o'clock, because it's 5 o'clock somewhere in the world. And, I'm trying to do as little as I can because I'm looking at this as a vacation, then you probably aren't going to have a very good case. What this has done is, I think what the good news is to the person who asked, I think the good news here is that companies, we always talked about companies are going to have to be more flexible in letting people work from home. They're just going to have to be, because millennials and the younger generations are demanding it and technology allows it. And as more boomers retire, then the younger generations are going to be coming up, and I know they're going to be a lot more flexible. So we were tiptoeing a little bit at a time into it when all this happened. Then all of a sudden, boom, everybody's working from home. Companies were pushed into it. They had to get ready technology-wise. They had to learn how to deal with it from home. And all of us are learning all kinds of new skills about doing so, whether we wanted to or not. And so that's all good for people who hope working from home under more normal life circumstances might be a part of their future, because companies have been forced into it. So now they can't really say, well, I don't know how that would work, because they do know how that would work. And once you take away, now the kids aren't home. Now, I don't have my spouse in the other room, and the pendulum will swing back a little bit the other way. So think about building a business case. How does your organization measure productivity? And how can you show how you stayed productive and communicative and responsive to your customers, to your colleagues, to your boss while you're working from home? What's your proof? Because we've talked about this with Sloane all the time. One of the things you have to do is make the business case. It's kind of like, if you run an organization and a person comes to you and says, I'd like to have a raise. I need a 10% raise. And I say to you, well, why do you think you deserve a 10% raise? Well, I need that to pay my bills. That's a huge mistake. That's not your company's problem. What is the business case for you getting a raise? Everybody would like to make more. Everybody would like to have more. And so to use your personal needs as a reason, it certainly could be the impetus for starting the conversation, and it does depend on the relationship you have with your boss. But you want to make sure that it's sort of the what's in it for them. What is in it for them? Is it just, I want to, and if I don't, I'll quit? Yeah, no, please don't ever do that. It really is about what's in it for the company for you to work from home, and how might that benefit the company. So let's see. All right, other questions. I love this one. I'm terrified my dog, husband, or child is going to make an unwelcome appearance on a video call. How bad is it if that happens? Well, that kind of depends on what kind of call it is, doesn't it? I've got my dogs in the background, and they've been really, really quiet. And I just jinxed myself, I'm sure, by saying that. But on this call, because I'm being this is a call from home. I'm answering questions. It's pretty casual. If one of them starts barking, I don't think it's going to be the end of the world. But if I was on an interview, it would be really bad. And I have shut them in a room before, and one of them got the door open, and they did come in on a call one time. So I think first thing you do is level set expectations. First of all, when you're talking to people during this time, people do expect things to be a little nutty. So I've said before, look, I have dogs, they bark. People who know me know how much I love dogs and animals. And so it's kind of on brand for me to have dogs barking in the background. But husbands and kids, especially unclothed husbands and kids, not so great. So you want to always make sure that you've got a room where you've got, put a sign on the door, whatever it is. But I would also think it's okay to say up front, hey, look, I'm asking for a little bit of grace here, a little forgiveness, a little space, because, let's say you live in a city where you're all in a 1,200 square foot apartment and there's 4 people. That's very different from having a house where you have a lot of different rooms. And so I think saying up front, look, I've got, we're managing a lot of things here. If you see an unwanted visitor walk behind me, just ignore them. Use some humor with it. It's sort of like, let's say you're networking or interviewing and you've got, your mother is in the hospital and you might be expecting a call from a doctor. I think you have to level set that and say, look, my mom is in the hospital. It's an urgent situation, or my wife's about ready to give birth. So I apologize. I do need to check my phone every 30 minutes. You set that up front. If you do that up front, you get their agreement, and then you get that forgiveness. But if you're just like distracted and looking at your phone all the time, and you have packs of wild dogs roaming in the background and half naked people, then people are going to wonder, what kind of craziness do you live in? They might want to come over and join you. So yeah, we're all kind of to that point. Okay, models. If I do attend a casual or happy hour Zoom meeting, how can I exit? I would say that's about setting boundaries up front and saying, hey, I've got about 30 minutes and then I've got to jump off the call and do something with my kids. Or I can have that call for about 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And you, again, remember what I said earlier? No is a complete sentence. Or I need to get off the call now. Complete sentence. If somebody says why, say, I've got some other, in other words, what you want to say is none of your business. But what you can say is, not my, got other things. I got some other things I have to do. I've got another call. Nobody needs to know. It's not your responsibility to entertain all of your family and friends. And so setting those boundaries and being very clear is very freeing. Can you model some responses to setting boundaries? Yeah. I know some people who are incredible at setting boundaries. One of them actually was my guest on my podcast this week, The Evolved Career. Her name is Morgan Field. And Morgan is a rock star at saying no. And as she says herself, she used to be a complete hot mess, which she did. And now she's turned that completely around. But she's the first one that will say, I can do that at 3 to 3:30. Or no, I don't want to participate in that. Or that's not the best use of my time right now. And I think we have to respect things like that instead of being offended by it. So you can say, I'm doing personal Zoom calls only on Sunday afternoons right now. And then people are going to go, but why? I can't do Sunday afternoon. Blah, blah, blah. Don't you love me? Blah, I really need you. No is a complete sentence. So set time chunks aside. With work, it's a little bit harder. I understand that. But you could, you can say to your boss in some cases, and I know these are all dependent, but you can say, I have my kids to manage. My wife has a full-time job. My husband has a full-time job. I will not be accessible in the evenings, Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, depending on what your business is. One of my favorite sayings, and I think it was Dr. Phil who says this, is we teach people how to treat us. That is one of my absolute favorite sayings. What are you teaching people about how to treat you? We get what we accept. And sometimes we have to say yes, but we can say no way more often than we think we can. So we have a question from another Julie. Julies are the best. I have come to the realization that the insane work hours that I've been working during this time are not just worth it to me. Can you discuss the best course to take to step it down a notch? To take a step down a position. Okay, not sure if you're looking at taking a step back at work, like to a lower level position. But if you are, and maybe Julie, maybe you can elaborate there. But if you are, first of all, I think we're in a world now where stepping back and stepping down to a lower position doesn't increase or doesn't decrease our stress. Everybody's under it. So I would take a look at, so the insane hours you're working are not worth it. Okay, I'd love to be how do we break that down? What can you control? So let's take a look at the pieces, the puzzle there. Can you walk back the hours you're working? Is the amount of hours you're working, is it temporary? Or is this always been what you've been dealing with ever since, you've been working for this company, and just being at home has made you go, I've reached my limit. So therefore I'm not going to do it anymore. Maybe you've just reached your breaking point, or maybe this is temporary. And so I would first ask yourself that question, and then say, okay, what are the solutions? Is this insanity likely to continue? And am I deciding not to put up with this insanity? Then I would look at, is it just the number of hours? Are the expectations on you unreasonable? In other words, break it down. What's making it? Or is it just, for the pay you're getting and what they expect of you, it's not worth it? So then the question becomes, what do I do about it? Can I get some temporary relief, or do I really need to change jobs or positions? And if, let's say, you're in a leadership role and you just want to be an individual contributor role, that can be helpful. That can be less stressful. So yes, that's a way potentially to do it too, where you say, I really learned through this time that being in a leadership role is not right for me. It's not the best use of my skills. I was happiest in my career when I was an individual contributor doing this. I'd like to talk about a plan to help me get to that place where I can go back to doing more of this. Here's what I'm willing to do. And here's what I'm no longer willing to do. One of the things that I find is when we have reached professional maturity, we are willing to say, no, that job is not the best fit for me. However, I'll do this instead. I would like more of this and less of this. And when someone comes to you and says, hey, Fred, how about we add this to your plate? I get sometimes you don't have a choice, but only say yes to the things that you can hit out of the park. Only say yes to things that are going to help you shine. If you feel useless, worthless, incompetent, like a bumbler in your job, it doesn't mean you were any of those things. What it means is you're in the wrong job. I want you to think about that. If you've ever felt like that in your career today or in the past, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It means you're in the wrong job, the wrong company, the wrong situation, and you need to fix that. You need to invest the time and energy and resources to fix that so that you can have career happiness throughout the rest of your career. All right, let's see. I'm nervous my space isn't very professional for video interviews. Yes. Yeah, I mean, no naked pictures, no alcohol. You know, I know we're all like, when we're on these calls, we're like looking at people's houses, like, ooh, what do they have on the walls? I have lots of pictures of dogs on my walls. And you can learn a lot about people you know, when you're looking at, you know, when you're looking at their home space. And so what does your home space say about you? Even if your walls are blank, and maybe you just take some things off the walls for this period of time and stack up some books. I mean, when I see like on news shows, you'll see like news commentator or like pundits talking about certain things, and they'll be in front of their bookshelves and all these, you know, really important books are on the bookshelf. And I'm always looking at the spines of the books to see what are up there. And then you have to wonder, are they really reading those? So look, you know, even get on a call with someone who you trust and say, how does this look? You know, I was like, you know, of course I'm like always moving my computer up and down, you know, trying to make sure that, you know, your face looks good and you don't look like you're 80. And so we all, so be objective. And if you can't, get somebody else to comment on your space and to say, does this look okay? Is my light good? Because lighting and things like that are really important too. I don't know if you saw that thing yesterday. It was on ABC or CBS where that reporter didn't have pants on. And he says he had shorts on, but you could only see, he didn't know that you could see through the table to his legs. And so he swears he had pants on. So if you have something really important, then that you've gone on, get somebody else on there to look with you and make sure that you're showing what you want to show. Because, you know, again, you have more grace in this time, but at the same time, you know, you want to be professional about it. So one of our questioners, Julie, said she's in a new company. She resigned. Did you resign your new company already? If so, good. I always say good for you. I find that when people make the decision that they want more, they deserve more. And I don't mean more money or more responsibility. I mean more of what makes them happy and fulfilled and effective at work. When you make that decision, I say, yay for you. And sometimes what happens when you make those decisions and you walk away, you get all kinds of pushback. Why would you do that? Why would you walk away from that company? You had a great job. What's wrong with you? People would give their right arm for that. But remember, everybody who says those kind of things is speaking to you from their place, from what they think, and they're not you. So someone might look at you as, wow, you had this great job with this big company making big bucks. But if you feel like you're dying inside, then what's it for? What's it for? And if nothing else, this period of time should teach you that there is much more than giving 120% at work. Because remember what I said earlier, your company wants you until the day they don't. And so you have to act accordingly. You have to figure out what is going to make you happy. And don't ever fall into that, just be glad you have a job. that was such a prevalent way of thinking back in 2008. And I'm afraid it's going to start again. But you don't have to take that on. And I tell, don't take that on. Maybe right now at this moment, you need to hang on to what you have, but you don't have to keep what you have. There's something bigger and better for you out there, but you have to have courage to go for it. And it does take a lot of courage. All right. All right, we are at the end of our questions. I really, really, really appreciate everybody coming on today. I'm going to keep doing this as long as you keep showing up. Bring your questions. You can put them on my Bauke Group Facebook page. If you're in a job search, check out Stop Peeing on Your Shoes. It's on Amazon. Check out my podcast, The Evolved Career, where I talk to really great and interesting people who made really big and courageous moves in their careers. And I think that sometimes can inspire us to do more in our own careers. So thanks for coming, and see you next week on with Sloanie, and then right after back here. And feel free to reach out on Facebook if you have any comments or thoughts. And let's all get career happy together. Thank you so much.